The ancient Egyptian civilization founded its empire and made face-to-face contact with the civilizations of the ancient Near East. It gave a lot and borrowed a lot. The Egyptian religion, the systems of government, and Egyptian customs and arts made a significant impact on those countries. That influence continued for several centuries after the demise of Egypt's political influence in those countries. Egypt's favor was not only restricted to the spread of culture and knowledge to neighboring countries and distant horizons, but the Egyptian religion had a prominent impact in all latitudes and times as well. Akhenaton's doctrine was the best of Egypt's exports outside its borders, before the clergy distorted it in the bud at its birth and origin. His belief was expressed by that great anthem of his, which he sang in praise of the worshipped, the creator of the heavens, the earth, the people, everything. Even though he called him Atun, it is certain that he meant God the Great and the Almighty. His praise to God was a lofty, sophisticated piece of literature expressed by a human being, who is a believer in God the Creator, a believer in the creation, and the last day. As for the claims that his great anthem was the original of the greater part of Psalm 104, that the papyrus Omnimo Ebi was the source from which he extracted the comprehensive book of Proverbs, and that these two documents favorably influenced the Hebrews in composing part of their culture when they began writing some parts of the Old Testament in the 8th century BC, we have some reservations about that which we will mention later. There is a world of difference between Akhenaton's faith and his belief on the one hand, and on the other hand, the clergy's disbelief, concealment of truth, and their polytheism with which they misled their people and then exported it outside their country's borders, thus distorting the portrait of the greatest civilization in history in making people outside Egypt's borders believe that it was an atheist civilization with a god pharaoh sitting on its throne. The sages of the Greeks. The Hellenic myths started the European age of science and knowledge, philosophy, psychology and religion, history and archaeology. They had attracted the imagination and feelings of writers, poets, painters, and authors in general since the old Greek age up to the present day. The world is still illuminated by the light of that philosophical heritage bequeathed to us by the Greeks. Hellenic mythology is unequaled in number and meanings with its philosophic, literary, and religious values. They suggest that the Greeks used to receive lessons in knowledge and its secrets from some source that is higher than the level of human beings. Myths are basically stories about the gods, divine teachings, and about good and evil. Myths from all sources agree that there is only one creator who created everything from water. Myths, whether pharaonic or Hellenic, refer symbolically to subjects of extreme depth and meaning. There is no real written history of myths, and we do not know the date when the myths were recorded. Pharaonic myths were known to the elite and the Egyptian people to the extent that many of them were not fully written. The Greeks were fond of those myths, and they quoted a lot of them, but it is rather difficult to know whether or not those myths were transferred in detail. It is certain that the fabrications, lies, and abuses of the priests of the pharaonic temples against the creator and the created leaked with Egyptian myths into the Greco. Myths whose civilization started in the same way as the Egyptian civilization, with divine teachings and absolute belief in the creator, the last day, resurrection, reward, and punishment. Then suddenly, the Hellenic civilization turned into a philosophical, dialectic, and material civilization, which quoted a lot of the myths of the pharaonic priests and transferred them into their belief. These lies and falsehoods leaked into an era of significant philosophers that were capable of differentiating between right and wrong. They alerted the people to the danger of atheism and reminded them to go back to monotheism. But they were persecuted by those were after polytheism, atheism, and paganism, the priests of the Hellenic temples whose ideals were the rich priests of the ancient Egyptian temples. The story of Socrates, the father of philosophers, bears witness to the injustice of the pagans. Asceticism, worship, the glorification of God and self-devotion to God were the means and ways used by the Hellenic sages to get to know theology and true knowledge. Socrates believed in the immortality of the soul, and that every soul has a spirit that preserves and inspires it, and that there is a God who we all will return to. He believed in the day of reckoning, in reward and punishment. The geniuses of the 5th century and the 4th and the 3rd centuries BC were unable through reason and logic to go back with their people and humanity to the age of theology, before the era of the ancient Greek civilization, which was completely devoid of atheism. There is a question here. How and where did the theologians come up with faith and certainty in the singleness of God Almighty? Certainty of God came to the ancient Egyptians through the gods, the angels, whom we have already mentioned. Did that certainty come to the Greeks through transfer in the same way everything else about the ancient Egyptian civilization has been transferred? Or did they start their civilization with the help of the apostle envoys, just as the ancient Egyptians had already done? Myths emerged with the appearance of Homer, who transferred and expressed them beautifully and clearly in his poetry 1,000 years BC. Like the Egyptian myths, Greek myths took a basic line: the Creator, the creation, and the beginning of the universe, and the creation of the gods, the apostles, or angels. The Greco-myths portrayed the gods in the form of human beings. Unlike the pharaohs who added to the gods the pictures of animals to add further dimensions to them, power, agility, etc. 12 gods constituted the divine family on the mountains of Olympios, headed by the god Zeus, whom Homer depicted as capable of performing extraordinary or supernatural actions. The god Zeus existed in a world entering the stage of urbanization. He was fair and used to punish liars who did not fulfill their promises. He was angry with those who committed evil or did harm to orphans. He was capable of moving the sun or bringing winter about. He was the mediator between the gods and the people, and asked the gods to do all that is good for the people. Apollo, son of Zeus, was the direct mediator between human beings and all the gods. He guided the people to know the divine will, as well as teaching them how to administer justice and peace between them and the gods. Artemis, Apollo's sister, represented the goddess of darkness and evil acts, just like Set in pharaonic mythology. That is the norm and divine wisdom, the existence of a negative force or what we call evil power, because the presence of a single positive